This year, I scored a 600 on the SATs. That was the moment I snapped, grabbed a knife, and trapped my entire school inside the auditorium. Sounds extreme, but this was the third time my score had been tampered with, and I was done pretending everything was fine. More than 1,000 students and teachers sat packed together, while the doors were chained shut behind us. I shouted through the broken window frame toward the police. 30 minutes. Bring me the person who switched my test. Every minute you stall, someone dies. Parents outside collapsed against the barricades, begging, pleading, sobbing that I was punishing the wrong people. Their cries barely registered. I pressed the knife to a student's neck and said, 1 minute has passed. I only want the person who ruined my future. And I knew for a fact that person was somewhere in this building. Just a few minutes earlier, the principal had been lecturing me from his platform, acting like I should be grateful for his generous offer to repeat my senior year for a fourth time. I pulled out the knife and drove it into his arm. When I yanked it free, blood splattered down his shirt. He doubled over, swearing at me through gritted teeth. Sarah, have you lost it? Nobody changed your exam. We already showed you the booklet. Your name, your ID, everything. He waved his good hand wildly. The police are on their way. If you don't want to spend your life behind bars, let us go. I spun the knife between my fingers, feeling strangely calm. I didn't walk in here planning to walk out. Taking the rest of you with me is an acceptable ending. Outside, a familiar voice boomed through a megaphone. Officer Miller. Sarah, listen to me. Don't do anything reckless. We're reopening the investigation about your exam. Release the hostages first and we'll get to the bottom of it. A humorless laugh escaped me. 3 tries at the SAT. 3 disasters. People have always called me a prodigy, a perfect student, the one who would graduate with a flawless score. But the first time my results came back, it was a pathetic 1,000. I blamed myself and repeated the year. Second time, it dropped to 900. I refused to believe it. I pushed through another round. This year, I wrote down every answer, double-checked them, compared my choices with the official answer key the moment it was released. By my calculation, I should have landed around 1580. Yet the score report said 600. I demanded to see my test booklet, and the moment I opened it, I knew. The handwriting was not mine. Neither were the answers. That wasn't my test at all. I filed a police report, but the case was quietly buried, like nothing ever happened. Now I faced the nearest camera and shouted, "Bring me the person who stole my test. You have 29 minutes left." Officer Miller's voice wavered. Sarah, I know you're disappointed, but this is a serious allegation. It can't be solved instantly. That sounds like your problem, I replied. I only want the truth. He tried again, desperate. These are your classmates and teachers. You grew up with them. Do you really want to hurt them? I shrugged. Their lives depend on your efficiency, not my mercy. 25 minutes remain. Chaos broke out almost immediately. Word of what I had done spread like wildfire, and soon the front gates were crammed with frantic parents. When they heard my ultimatum over the loudspeaker, panic turned to hysteria. Please, she didn't do anything to you. Don't touch my daughter. Why aren't the police stopping her? If something happens to my son, I will sue every single one of you. Officer Miller rushed straight to the entrance, but he hit the reinforced metal I had bolted over the doors. He wasn't getting in. No one was. Only I could unlock it. Watching him pound on the steel, I reminded him calmly, 23 minutes. He stiffened, then started barking orders into his radio before shouting back at me. Sarah, when you filed your report, we did check. The handwriting on the SAT booklet matched yours. Tests cannot be substituted without forensic evidence. That 600 was yours. He paused, letting the words land. He was telling me I was delusional. When I didn't answer, he tried a different approach. I know your family is having a hard time. Let us help you. We can arrange scholarships, tutoring, whatever you need. The desperate parents outside jumped in immediately. I will pay for your tuition myself. Just let my son go. You want tutors? I will hire the best in the city. I run a prep center. You can attend all our courses for free. Just release the students. Their offers did tempt me for a moment. Anyone would be tempted. But none of it mattered. If I couldn't stop the person behind the score swapping, I could take the SAT every year until I was 70, and the results would still be rigged. I settled in my chest. I spoke again, my voice steady. I don't want money. I want the person who stole my test. Miller muttered something under his breath, then shouted, There is no person. Who exactly do you expect us to produce? So, You're going to kill innocent people over a fantasy? I let out a sharp laugh. Their fate depends on you. Bring me the culprit, and everyone walks out. SAT security is airtight. Chain of custody strict. Only someone high up, someone with access, could have switched my test without leaving traces. I couldn't uncover that alone. I needed the police to take it seriously. But Miller was furious, powerless. I ignored him and scanned the room until my gaze settled on Principal Henderson. Tell me who did it and you walk out the door right this second. Fair deal, don't you think? For 1 second he faltered, tempted. Then he forced himself to shake his head. No one touched her test, Sarah. This needs to stop. My eyes stayed on him as I calculated where to cut to make him talk. I raised the knife. Then a trembling voice echoed from outside. Sarah, sweetheart, please stop. You don't have to go to college if you can't. Mom and Dad will look after you. My parents. Rage boiled under my skin. Miller had dragged them straight from the hospital. 5 years ago, my father was diagnosed with cancer. 3 years after that, my mother's kidneys began to fail. We sold our home, our savings, everything to keep them alive. I had one path to pay for their care, and that path required a top university. They kept crying, begging, turning helplessly to Miller for directions. He urged them on. Just keep talking. She needs to hear you. If she hurts anyone, her future is finished. They opened their mouths to plead again, but froze when they saw me haul a dazed student toward the doorway. Through the small gap in the metal plating, Miller locked eyes with me right as I pressed the blade to the girl's chest. His face drained of color. Sarah, don't do this. You had time to drag my dying parents here, I said quietly, but no time to bring me the real culprit. Shows how little you care about the kids inside. Before he could respond, I drove the knife forward. The scream tore through the auditorium. I twisted the blade, and blood gushed down the girl's shirt, spreading across the floor in a slow, dark pool that seeped under the armored doorway. The moment the parents outside saw the blood, the crowd erupted. She stabbed her. She actually stabbed her. Why aren't the cops breaking the door down? There are hundreds of us, and one of her. Push the barricade. I looked straight at Miller and smiled, the expression sharp and fractured. I dosed the water hours ago. Everyone in here is barely conscious. Your team tries to breach, and I cut faster than any of you can move. Miller's face reddened with fury. You dare threaten an officer? You've lost your mind. I didn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. Instead, I yanked the knife out and plunged it into the girl again. Her scream cracked, then dropped into a wet choke. The parents howled. Miller swore. Stop. We'll find whoever you want. Just stop stabbing her. I pulled the blade free and leaned close to the gap in the steel. 15 minutes. If you don't have the culprit by then, she bleeds out right here. She's the first, not the last. Miller had been clinging to the hope that I was bluffing. That hope vanished the moment he saw her blood. He sucked in a breath and spoke to the SWAT commander beside him. The breaching expert shook his head. She reinforced everything. If we force our way in, she'll slaughter half the hostages before we get through one barrier. Miller slammed his fist down, knuckles splitting. His eyes were raw with frustration. He had been ordered to save the hostages at all costs, and if necessary, put a bullet in me. But I stayed shielded behind the weakened students, moving them like pieces on a board. Parents tried to storm the police line. A huge man grabbed Miller by the jacket. My daughter is in there, and you're just standing here? Do something. If she dies, I swear, you're going with her. You have guns, don't you? Trade places with my kid. For a moment, Miller looked like he might collapse. He swallowed hard and promised he would get their children out alive. Right as he tried to speak again, my voice rang out over the speakers. 10 minutes. Miller held my stare, jaw clenched, and muttered, You are out of your mind. I smiled without warmth. You push me here. Bring me the person who wrecked my future, or I will show you exactly how far madness can go. He turned away, any hope of negotiation gone, and snapped at the forensics team. Did you find anything? One of the techs looked sick. We combed through every recording from the testing center. Nothing. Everything follows procedure. The booklet is hers. Another tech chimed in quietly. She failed 3 times. She cannot handle the truth. She is imagining tampering. Miller knew that was the logical conclusion, but logic meant nothing when a blade was pressed to a teenager's neck. He kept pushing. Double check. There has to be something. Any anomaly at all. The first tech hesitated. Well, during the transfer to the secure office, there is a 30-second dead zone in the hallway camera. But no one can switch to us that fast, right? Miller's expression tightened. Look again. Start from that gap. I glanced at my phone. 3 minutes left. I dragged 5 students and 2 staff members toward the entrance. Through the thin opening between the steel plates, the crowd had a clear view of their terrified faces. 3 minutes. Who should be next? I slid the flat side of the blade along their throats in turn, choosing by rhythm like a child's game. Parents recognized their children and collapsed on the pavement, bowing and begging. Please take me instead. Please let her go. You want tuition? I will cover everything. Just spare my son. You want a future? I will buy you one, whatever it costs. My expression did not change. 2 minutes. A large man shot to his feet, pointing at me with shaking hands. If you touch my kid, I swear I'll drag you to hell myself. He turned on the police. Why are you standing there? She is going to slaughter them. I ignored him. 1 minute. Miller, I expected more from you. He was frantic now. Wait, stop. We have something. Just give us a moment. I started counting. 3, 2, 1. The knife plunged into a boy's chest. His body spasmed, then fell limp. His mother fainted on the spot. The crowd lost control. Screams and curses beat against the metal like a storm. Miller's voice cracked with rage. Sarah, how could you? I slid the blade out, wiping it on his shirt. From now on, 1 life per minute, until you bring me the person responsible. I moved to the next trembling student, silently counting backward from 10. Right as I lifted the knife, a loud siren cut through the air. A patrol car screeched to a stop. Miller spun around, eyes blazing. Sarah, listen. We found him. The one who tampered with your SAT results for 3 straight years. This time, you're getting into the college you always wanted. For the first time, something tightened in my throat. 3 years. Finally. 2 officers dragged a handcuffed man out of the car. A black hood covered his face. My hand slipped on the metal door handle. Sweat. Nerves. Disbelief. That silhouette. That height. That posture. No way. Not him. Then my phone vibrated in my pocket. 1 glance at the message, and all the blood drained from my body. The text message was from an unknown number. Just 3 words that made my world tilt sideways. Check your pocket. My free hand fumbled into my jacket. My fingers closed around something that shouldn't have been there, a folded piece of paper I definitely hadn't put there myself. I unfolded it with shaking hands, the knife momentarily forgotten. The man outside isn't who you're looking for. But if you kill 1 more person, the real culprit disappears forever. You have exactly what you wanted 3 years ago. Look closer at your first SAT. A friend. Outside, Miller was shouting something about bringing the suspect forward, preparing to remove the hood. The crowd pressed closer, hungry for resolution. But I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. My first SAT. The one that scored 1,000 instead of the perfect score I'd earned. I had assumed all 3 tests were sabotaged the same way, switched with inferior booklets. But what if I'd been wrong? What if the first test had been switched with someone else's higher score, not lower? What if someone had been trying to help me? Sarah? Miller's voice cut through my thoughts. We have him. Release the hostages. I looked at the hooded figure. Wrong height. Wrong build. This was a decoy, someone they'd grabbed to buy time, to end the standoff. And I had almost fallen for it.
My phone buzzed again.
Another message. Your father's medical bills. Who paid them when you ran out of money 2 years ago? I spread through my veins. We'd been drowning in debt. The hospital had threatened to discharge Dad. Then suddenly, mysteriously, someone had paid off 6 months of treatment. Anonymous donor, they'd said. Mom and Dad thought it was a miracle. I'd been too desperate to question it. Sarah? Miller tried again, more cautiously now. Did you hear me? I stepped back from the door, pulling the frightened students with me, my mind racing through 3 years of evidence I'd been too angry to see clearly. Someone had been manipulating my scores. But not to destroy me. To control me. I dropped the knife and grabbed my backpack from where I'd stashed it near the stage. The hostages watched in confused silence as I tore through old papers, test prep books, hospital bills.
There.
My first SAT booklet, the one I'd kept because I couldn't believe the score. I flipped it open, hands trembling. The handwriting was definitely not mine. I'd known that from the start. But I'd been so focused on the wrong answers that I'd never looked at what the answers actually spelled out. Every fifth wrong answer, first letter only, HELPME. Someone had used my test to send a message. 10 seconds, Sarah. Miller warned. Then we're coming in whether you're ready or not. I grabbed the second test booklet. Different handwriting, but the same pattern in the errors. TRAPPED. The third test, this year's test with the 600 score. CNTSCAP. 3 years. 3 cries for help hidden in sabotaged SAT exams. Someone was being held against their will, forced to take my tests, replacing my booklets with theirs. Someone who couldn't risk writing a direct plea but hoped the pattern would eventually be noticed. And I'd been too focused on my own destroyed future to see it. Principal Henderson, I said quietly, turning to face him. He was still clutching his bleeding arm, face pale. Who administers the SATs at our school? He blinked, confused by the question.
What?
The college board sends proctors, but our vice principal, Mrs. Chun, oversees the logistics. She's been doing it for 20 years. Why does that? Where is Mrs. Chun right now? Henderson's face went blank. She called in sick today. Said it was the flu. The phone buzzed again. 118, Riverside Drive. Basement. She has less than an hour of air left. Your choice. Justice for yourself, or mercy for another. I looked at the bleeding student at my feet, at the boy I'd just killed, at the hundreds of terrified faces staring back at me. What had I become? Miller. I shouted toward the door. Mrs. Chun. The vice principal. Where is she? A pause. Then, we've been trying to reach her all morning for questioning. No answer. 118, Riverside Drive. I said, my voice cracking. There's someone trapped in her basement. Someone who's been forced to take my SATs for 3 years. Someone who's suffocating right now while we waste time with decoys. Silence. Then frantic radio chatter. I walked to the reinforced door and began unlocking it with shaking hands. I'm coming out. Arrest me.
Shoot me.
I don't care. But send someone to that address now. The doors swung open.
SWAT flooded in.
Parents screamed and rushed past the police line. I dropped to my knees, hands behind my head, and closed my eyes. I had wanted justice. Instead, I'd become the villain in someone else's nightmare. They didn't shoot me. Apparently, Miller had given orders to take me alive. I was thrown into a police car within seconds, cuffs biting into my wrists, while ambulances screamed toward the school. Through the window, I watched the chaos. Parents reuniting with their children. Medical teams rushing the injured to stretchers. Miller barking orders into 3 different radios at once. And one SWAT van peeling away from the scene, heading toward Riverside Drive. The officer in the front seat, young, barely older than me, kept glancing back with a mixture of fear and disgust. You killed 2 kids, he said. You know that, right? Whatever you thought you were doing, you murdered. I know what I did, I said flatly. 23 minutes later, Miller's voice crackled over the radio. We found her. Chen's daughter, Lily. 16 years old. She's alive but barely. Paramedics are administering oxygen now. The young officer's hands tightened on the wheel. Chen's daughter? What the hell is going on? Miller continued, his voice strained. There's a note down here. Handwritten confession. Mrs. Chen has been... Jesus. She's been forcing her daughter to swap test booklets with Sarah for 3 years. Another voice cut in, forensics. We found the evidence room. Chun had access to the secure SAT storage. She'd been drugging her daughter, forcing her to take the tests under Sarah's identity, then switching the booklets during the 30-second camera gap. The daughter tried to leave messages in the answers hoping someone would notice. The officer looked at me in the rearview mirror, his expression shifting to something more complicated than simple disgust. Why? I whispered. Why would she do that? Miller's voice came through again. According to the note, Chen's daughter is gifted. Off the charts intelligent. But she has severe social anxiety, couldn't handle the pressure of school. Chun became obsessed with making sure Lily got into a top university anyway. She'd been planning this for years, found a student with the same demographic profile, same test center, similar build. She'd been grooming Sarah as her daughter's proxy. My stomach turned. The medical bills. She paid off my father's treatment. To create leverage, Miller confirmed. To make sure you'd be desperate enough, dependent enough, that you'd never look too closely at the irregularities. When Sarah started fighting back, Chun got desperate. She locked Lily in the basement, Told her if she didn't take this year's test and score low enough to look like Sarah had broken under pressure, she'd cut off all access to the outside world permanently. The radio fell silent for a moment. Then, bring Sarah to County Hospital. Lily's asking to see her. They didn't uncuff me, but they let me into the room with 2 guards posted at the door. Lily Chin was tiny, almost childlike in the hospital bed, oxygen mask covering half her face. Her eyes, dark, intelligent, haunted, locked onto mine the moment I entered. She pulled the mask down. You came. I almost didn't, I said honestly. I almost let you die because I was too angry to think. She smiled weakly. I almost let you kill everyone because I was too scared to risk a clearer message. We're both terrible at this. Despite everything, a bitter laugh escaped me. Your mother destroyed my life. But you saved those hostages by leaving me clues. I destroyed your life too, Lily said softly. Every time I took that test, I knew I was stealing your future. But if I refused... She trailed off, eyes distant. She said she'd make sure I never saw daylight again. And I believed her. I sank into the chair beside her bed. The first test. You scored 1,000, but it should have been higher. I sabotaged my own answers trying to warn you, she admitted. I thought if the score was weird enough, someone would investigate. But it just made you repeat the year, and Mom got more careful. By the second test, she was watching me take every question. I could only hide messages in the pattern of errors. I never looked, I said, throat tight. I was so focused on being angry at the world that I didn't see someone was suffering worse than me. Lily's hand crept across the blanket toward mine. I flinched. These were the hands that had written wrong answers over my correct ones, that had stolen 3 years of my life. But they were also the hands of another prisoner. I took her hand. What happens now? She asked. I'm going to prison, I said. I killed someone, Lily. Maybe 2 someones. I held hundreds of people hostage. There's no walking back from that. But you found me. You saved me. That doesn't balance the scales. We sat in silence, 2 broken teenagers holding hands in a hospital room, while our futures, whatever was left of them, dissolved like smoke. Finally, Lily spoke again. The SAT answer keys. The ones from all 3 years. I memorized them. Every question, every answer. I can testify that you got nearly perfect scores. I shook my head. It doesn't matter anymore. It matters to me, she insisted. I can't give you back the 3 years my mother stole, but I can give you the truth. Outside the window, dawn was breaking over the city. Somewhere, parents were planning funerals. Somewhere, my own parents were probably being told their daughter was going to prison for the rest of her life. Somewhere, Mrs. Chun was in custody, her carefully constructed plan shattered. And somewhere, in the wreckage of all these ruined futures, there had to be a lesson I was supposed to learn. But sitting there in that hospital room, I couldn't for the life of me figure out what it was. The trial lasted 6 weeks. The prosecution called me a monster, a terrorist, a murderer. They showed photos of the dead boy's mother collapsing at his funeral. They played recordings of hostages describing the hours of terror, of watching me stab their classmates, of believing they would die. They weren't wrong. The defense tried to paint me as a victim driven to madness by systematic abuse. They brought in psychologists who testified about the effects of prolonged gaslighting, about how Mrs. Chen's manipulation had created a pressure cooker situation. They presented Lily's testimony, the decoded messages in the SAT booklets, evidence of the conspiracy that had stolen my future. They weren't wrong either. In the end, the judge sentenced me to 15 years, with possibility of parole after 8. Lighter than it could have been, considering the fact that I'd ultimately saved Lily's life, that I'd surrendered voluntarily, that I was 17 at the time. All of it bought me a sliver of mercy. Mrs. Chen got life, without parole. They found evidence she'd been planning to stage Lily's suicide once she'd extracted enough high SAT scores to secure college admission. The basement had a carbon monoxide generator on a timer. I would have been her daughter's murderer, without ever knowing she existed. Lily was placed with her father, Chen's ex-husband who'd been fighting for custody for years. Last I heard, she'd been accepted to MIT with a full scholarship, her real test scores finally recognized. She writes to me sometimes, careful letters about philosophy and ethics, and whether forgiveness is possible when both parties are simultaneously victim and perpetrator. I don't know how to answer those letters. Usually I just draw a small heart at the bottom and send them back. My parents visit once a month. Dad's cancer is in remission. Mom got a kidney transplant. They cry every time they see me, apologizing for not protecting me, for being sick, for needing so much that it pushed me over the edge. I tell them what the prison therapist tells me to say. It wasn't your fault. I made my own choices. Some days I even believe it. The boy I killed, his name was Marcus Webb, would have been graduating this spring. His younger sister started a foundation in his name for students dealing with academic pressure. They sent me a brochure once. I'm not sure if it was meant as forgiveness or accusation. Maybe both. Officer Miller retired early, 6 months after the incident. PTSD, they said. He still sends me books sometimes, thick philosophy texts about justice and revenge, and the price of both. He never includes a note, but I understand what he's trying to say. We're all trying to understand what happened that day. Why I cracked. Why no one stopped it sooner. Why the system failed so catastrophically that 2 teenage girls became collateral damage in the machine of prestige and achievement. The other hostages, most of them don't want to hear from me. A few have written, telling me they forgive me. They understand I was hurt too. I think that's worse than the ones who curse my name. At night, I dream about the moment I first raised that knife. In the dreams, I make a different choice. I put the weapon down. I walk out of the auditorium. I find another way. In the dreams, Marcus is still alive. Lily is free. My future isn't measured in years behind bars. But when I wake up, I'm still here, and he's still gone, and there's no revision, no retake, no way to swap out this version of events for a better one. I scored a 600 on the SATs. That was the moment everything changed. And if I could go back, knowing what I know now, would I make different choices? The honest answer is, I don't know. I wanted justice. I wanted truth. I wanted someone to acknowledge that I'd been wronged. I got all 3, and it cost me everything. The real question isn't whether my anger was justified, it was. The question is whether my actions were, and on that, I remain silent. Because the moment you start explaining why you held a knife to innocent people's throats, you've already lost the argument. I'm 21 now. 7 years left on my sentence, maybe less with good behavior. I tutor other inmates for their GED exams. I lead a book club on Thursday nights. I've taken enough college correspondence courses that I might actually have an associate's degree by the time I get out. It's not the future I dreamed of. It's not Harvard or Stanford or any of the schools I used to whisper to myself at night like prayers. But it's a future. And it's mine. And no one can take this one away from me. Last week, Lily sent me a photo. She's standing in front of MIT's main building, holding up a handwritten sign. For both of us. I keep it tucked under my pillow. Some nights, when the guilt threatens to drown me, I take it out and remind myself, at least one good thing came from that terrible day. At least one trapped girl found her way to daylight. Even if I had to sacrifice my own to make it happen.